My name is Matthew Wayne Selznick, and I know this much about relationships, and my girlfriend doesn't know this much about relationships. That's what we're going to talk about in this third episode of I Know This Much. I Know This Much is my podcast where I talk about pretty much whatever I want to. Creativity, issues about philosophy or science or relationships. And every once in a while, I'll bring somebody else into the show, or at least that's my intention, and this is the first time I'm going to do that. If I'm talking about relationships, who better to join me than my girlfriend, Meryl Phillips. Say hi to the people, Meryl.
Hi, people. I'm Meryl Phillips. It's a pleasure to meet you.
She's Meryl Phillips. Yeah, this was actually Meryl's idea, and I think it was a grand one. And so we have our water to stay hydrated, and we have our wine to stay
dehydrated.
We have our wine, yeah.
To meet in the middle.
Yeah, to meet in the middle. A little meeting.
Because it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Well, it's almost 5 o'clock.
It's almost 5 o'clock here, so yeah. So you guys are basically going to be watching just sort of a conversation as we talk about our perspectives on relationships. I've been kind of a serial monogamist. Yeah, serial monogamist. Lots of long-term relationships. Some of them strung way too closely together. Whereas Meryl, you haven't had as many long-term relationships.
I've been the dater. My sister used to call me the dater in high school. I will say this, I'm a very social person. And I don't want that to come off weird or anything, but I like to meet people of all different kinds, and I've always just seen it as kind of like a social experiment to meet people. And the unfortunate thing is, I meet like a lot of people who I may be attracted to, but I don't want to have long-term relationships with because there were things about them that weren't redeeming, but they seemed like interesting people. So I have more so just dated and gone on dates. But now as I get older, it's, kind of the norm to be in a relationship and be in a long-term relationship and be with someone. And I'm learning a lot about communication and being myself within a relationship and not completely losing myself. So that's something that I am working on.
The whole idea of losing yourself in the relationship, that was certainly something that I found myself doing more than once, because you want it to work, and you want to please the other person, and you want to, maybe there are expectations that you think you're supposed to be living up to, or social mores that mores. There's always at least one word or phrase in every episode where I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, so I say it 2 or 3 different ways. Let the people decide. But yeah, so that, I think this time around, that's been one of my goals, is like you said, as you get older, it's like, I'm pretty sure I know who I am now.
Yeah.
For the most part. And there's always more to learn, but when you kind of have an idea of who you are, I won't say it's take it or leave it, but you don't want to lose that, and you want the other person to kind of be accepting of that, of who you are, and be there because of who you are, right?
I think that's something I've been guilty of in relationships, like starting relationships, is having this early on movie montage in my head, like straight out of
we're going to run through the fields.
Yes, we're going to he's going to be at a family event with me, and we're going to just be so cute, and we're going to do all of this, champagne brunch, like all these visions of things that weren't real, and then you realize all the things that you're just like, okay, these are things that are real about you that I can't hang it with at all. Or we become this idea of like fat and happy, and like being happy is great, but like sitting on the couch and like being happy, but what happy isn't. Something I'll bring up kind of random. The first month that Matt and I were dating, I told Matt that I needed to do Whole30. And for those of you that know, it's a diet where you cut out grain, dairy, soy, legumes, you cut out sugar, and you also cut out alcohol. And I don't know if you guys have been in like a relationship before. I'm assuming you have, because I haven't. Just kidding. But, you start early on kind of having, if you're not a recovering addict, which is a thing, you most likely will spend a lot of dates and a lot of early opportunities having cocktails. And that was a month of us not...
Our first month
dating, not having any alcohol in our system. And going those first couple days of Whole30, your body is like detoxing and getting back into it. So he was seeing me, and I was seeing him for like who he was, and I was like, what are we doing, and why are we doing this? And granted, Matt's already, I don't know if he's brought it up, but he's already a pretty healthy eater, which I'm hoping rubs off on me. But I mean, that was a big deal, to be like who we truly were without any like veils of like, oh, I'm having a good time because the liquor says so.
Right. And,
but we actually, were getting to know each other. So that was a big deal for me.
The fact that we made it through that month?
That we were seeing each other for who we really were without any veils of like, being, I was gonna say incoherent.
Well, no,
but you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think.
And now here we are.
Whole30's over.
Just kidding.
And for context, we're talking about relationships and long-term and short-term relationships, and we're only 3 months in. So we are still very new, but I think it's safe to say, you don't want to use the cliche of like, but it's different this time, but it feels pretty different, partially, I think, because we came into it with like a lot of the expectations like right out there on the table. There wasn't a whole lot of room for like, well, I'm gonna, go along with this or that because I want to be in this relationship. It was more. We were very open with each other.
Yeah.
From hour one, practically. Our first date was supposed to be a walk. Ended up just hanging out, talking. Yes, people talking.
Wink.
It wasn't Netflix and chill. And
we're more old-fashioned than that. Like, please.
Right, yeah, if we're gonna Netflix and chill, there's gonna be some actual Netflix involved. Come on, it's good things to watch there.
Hashtag nerding out.
But that's one of the things that impressed me about you is right off the bat, you were like, this is who I am. This is what I like, what I don't like, what I want, what I don't want. In life, not even just in relationships. But we covered some of that too.
Well, and I felt like it was a safe environment, though, to also be that way, too. Because I established that I found you attractive and I thought you were cute. But I let you know up front that I don't really do relationships.
Yeah.
But let me also say this. There, at no point was there like, but I would be such a good boyfriend. There was never like a con into it to make me feel bad. And believe me, I've been in relationships where I've been like, I've had guys do all these things that were like boyfriendy things, like take me to a wedding or take me on a trip or do this stuff. And it's like, and I'm like, I don't know if I still want to be a girlfriend or be with you. And they knew that up front, but they're like, but I'm doing all these things.
I'm pulling all the levers.
You're doing all these things, and that's what you want to do, and no one said you shouldn't do them.
Right.
Excuse me, but I also said that sometimes the children come.
Yeah.
But no one said you had to do these things, but you did them. And and maybe it was at that time that I was like, and I've always been honest about that stuff, but maybe at the time I was like, still myself, I was like, yeah, that's so nice that you're doing those, and that you want a true, honest relationship, or whatever you find to be an honest relationship for yourself. But just because you're doing all these things, that doesn't call you a boyfriend, doesn't make you a boyfriend.
Yeah, it's not an automatic.
Which I hope doesn't make me sound like a cold-hearted snake, but
I don't think so. And I say that as unbiased as possible, but I understand. I think what you're saying is that it shouldn't be about, in a way, it shouldn't be about going through the motions. It shouldn't be, oh, well, they're doing all the things that are, in the character description of boyfriend, therefore they should be my boyfriend. Or, it doesn't, there has to be a mutual, respect is not quite the right word, but it kind of does come down to that. Because if there's an expectation, if I expect you to behave a certain way, to like me or to commit to a relationship in a certain way because of all the things that I'm doing, and I'm not listening to what you actually want, it's like, but I built you this beautiful mansion when I asked you to build me a car, and it's like, oh, that's a great mansion, but I don't need a mansion. I don't want to live in a mansion, I need a car.
Some people, and believe me, like I have, my parents are still together. My sister's married and has 2 kids. Like, I am surrounded by, like, healthy relationships and happy people.
Yeah.
And I didn't grow up with, like, a bad childhood because of it. But I also haven't been in a relationship where I felt like myself. I mean, the last relationship I was in that was, like, a longer-term relationship, I never went to my own apartment. Like, we would always be at the other person's apartment. It would get to the point where, like, a tumbleweed would roll by in my apartment, and I would, like, roll my fingers across the, like...
Fail the white glove test.
Yes, I failed the white glove test, exactly. And I was like, I'm never here. And it was weird for me to feel like a physical thing, like an apartment was me, but it was. It felt like the skin that I was in was an object just as if my apartment was.
Right.
And I wasn't myself in my skin, and I wasn't in my apartment, so who was I?
Right. Why,
And that's so weird to verbalize.
Why do you think, I want to ask why, it always had to be his apartment, but why do you think you were okay with it at first? Because clearly it became an issue.
I think because you think these are things that girls should do. Like, it comes down to a gender role thing.
Yeah.
Because I have always been interested in funny things. I've done improv, I've done stand-up.
Right.
I took a gender class in college, and the teacher asked everybody, what is something about you that is more masculine than feminine? And, like, some people were like, oh, well, I play sports really well. Oh, I do this. Oh, I do that. And I'm like, I raised my hand, and I was like, I do stand-up. I'm like, that's pretty much a dude's game.
Yeah.
And when I had done, and I told them this, I had a story about doing a comedy show at an open mic night, and they're like, why aren't you in a moo-moo? Why aren't you fat? Why aren't you this? They expected every comedian to be like Roseanne Barr, which Roseanne is like, lost a lot of weight. She speaks to the feminists out there. She's a really badass person. She does a column for Bust, where she like gives advice. So she's really awesome. But the fact that they were picking out kind of the negative things about her, and they're like, well, that's the only way you can be funny is if you're a cartoon of yourself.
Oh my God.
And it killed me. But it's like, so all these other parts of my life, I was like, well, I have to overcompensate for being more feminine. I went through a relationship where the second part of the relationship I became obsessed with making cupcakes and bringing cupcakes to an event. And my mom was like, oh, that's so great, la la la. And I'm like, this is so not me. I'm like, it's the nice thing to do and everyone's really happy when I bring them, but I'm not like Betty Crocker. I've never felt like this. And sometimes I feel like that's a disservice to the guys I date because, you know, is it expected that I should be more domestic about things and be more feminine about things?
See, I think I just kind of...
And I think that's why I felt the way I did. That's why I felt like I should be like okay with being at his house and using his things at the time.
Yeah, well, I just hooked into something you said there is you said something about the expectation. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they expect me to be more this or that, you know, am I supposed to be, like you did them, you said, did I do them a disservice by I think you said by not being more, shorthand, by not making more cupcakes, or, you know,
well, not being the archetypal woman, archetypal girlfriend, archetypal
the hair in the bun and the
female,
apron on. And,
female other half.
yeah. So, but see, to me, like, if that's not you, and they wanted that from you, you should do it with somebody else.
I think I was guilty at a time, and we've talked about this, and I've mentioned it before. There was a time when I would, and this is the thing with also not being a relationship person, is creating, or being in a long-term relationship, or not a long-term, a long-distance relationship with someone, which I have been in before.
Right.
And you kind of get to be the Barbie version of yourself.
Because you're leaving and going to another place.
Exactly.
And,
so when you do see them, it's like this idea of having like outfits for things, and like I'm
they never see you in your sweats.
Date night Meryl. Like I'm date night Meryl. I'm just get off the plane and aren't I so cute Meryl. I'm, you know, summertime by the pool Meryl. And you think that my nails always look like this, but I get them done. Or you think I like wax my own business and I don't. Like you think it just magically happens that way.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and at the time, at that age, I was okay with that. I was like, okay, like, you know, I'll have a week off to eat whatever I want and then get back in the gym, you know. You know, and so...
And that's just it. I mean, if that's... But that just... I don't know.
It worked at the time.
It worked at the time, but at some point, people are going to, like, have to hear you belch, you know?
Well, and you realize the other person doesn't appreciate it.
Because it's all they know.
Yes, I used to talk a lot about getting things waxed or getting my eyebrows done or something, and how it always hurt more when I was doing it for other people. Because either you were in a bad relationship, or they didn't appreciate it. And so it hurt that much more. Mm-hmm. So at one point I just decided, you know what? Everything I do, I'm going to start doing for me. And if you're there to enjoy it, fantastic.
Right. Which I think is how it should be.
But a lot of women don't think that way because it's like they want to do it for their other person.
Yeah, I know.
And there's like other things that I can do to you. There's other things I can do for you. I can tell you you're lovely. I can tell you that you make the best nachos. And I don't want to eat nachos anywhere else. Which he does. You know, I can just, you know, be there to hug you when you have a tough day.
Yeah. Well, and when you do, you know, get dolled up or whatever, or take extra steps to look great, it's like, I completely appreciate it because, you know, partially because I know that you're not just doing it for me, that you want to look good for looking good's sake. And, you know, if we go out and, you know, today we went out to lunch and it was, well, I wore what I wore because I'm, you know, the dude. But you were dressed pretty casual as well, you know, and so that's one thing. But there are times when we go out and, you know, the fact that you put that, to me, in my experience, a little more than a little extra effort into it.
not only does it make me feel more special, but it also makes me feel like it reminds me that you have a respect for yourself, and that it's like so many different things. You know, there's that, and there's also the idea that consciously or not, whether you intend to do this, to me, it feels like you are making an effort to make our date a little more special. Like this is an event. This isn't just, we're not just, you know, going out for drinks or going to the movies or whatever. We're going to the movie. We're going and doing a thing. We're not, you know.
Well, and I don't want to compare it to a religious situation, nor do I, you know, whatever. I don't want to offend anyone. But it's kind of like how
say whatever you want. If people are offended, they can turn it off.
How you would dress up for going to church, or you would dress up for going to temple, or you would even dress up for going to the theater, like an artistic event. You would dress nice.
You're showing respect for the occasion.
And that's why I feel like I like to dress up. It's not necessarily because, and I mean, you should be out with a hot girl. I'm sorry.
And I get to be.
As much as I can be. No Claudia Schiffer here.
You do all right.
I don't know.
But see, and this is something that's different for me. This is something that's new for me. And not that, you know, I haven't been with people who, you know, dressed up nice or whatever, who looked good, but I feel, I guess in the past sometimes I've felt like it's my obligation to look a little nicer, or, you know, to dress up in some way, or put on the nicer shoes, or what the fuck ever, you know.
Yeah.
I've never been more like aware that I've never been the guy who goes through his closet and pulls out a shirt and goes, oh God, no, I can't do that. But with you, and this is going to sound like it's almost like a negative thing, but to me it's a positive thing. With you, I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure I wore that last time. And last time might have been like a week and a half ago or whatever.
I love it. It's because we're being like photographed every time we go out.
But it's like for the first time that I can remember, I even give that a thought. It makes me sound like I was just like this selfish asshole who just wore sweats and a t-shirt to every event with my previous girlfriends. But no, it's like you know, in the same way that being with you has inspired me to be more productive and more goal-oriented and more actively like inspired. Being with you has also made me like want to look a little nicer, to shave more than 2 times a week, to, you know. And it's not like I think, well, you know, she's gonna get sick of me if I look like a bum all the time. It's more like, no, I actually want to look nice for you, which is weird for me, but I like it.
Well, I think the amazing thing about you, and this is something that I've always like summed up into one phrase. Like, clearly we all want someone who we're attracted to. Clearly we want someone who's smart. Clearly you want someone who's funny.
Sure.
Those are like things that you want across the board.
Yeah.
But the main thing that I've wanted is someone who lives the mullet way of life. And if anyone lives the mullet way of life more than Matthew Wayne Selznick, I don't know who it is.
Business in the front, party in the back.
Think about it. Business in the front, party in the back. Like, I don't know how much you know about Matt, but like, so Matt has his own business and works with a bunch of different people and likes to be, you know, taken seriously, but also help people and be regarded in the profession he does. But for those of you that know, he does like music and is creative and writes and has a podcast and all these things. So it's this idea of business in the front, party in the back. He has this business, he wants to be taken seriously, he wants to do all these things, but he has this passion. He has things that he cares about. He has like an artistic side. He has a wild side. I don't know if you know this about that side.
Watch out. What's happening?
Everything comes together and culminates in a very little bit of this, little bit of that way that's just really cool. And it's something that I want for myself, but I appreciate that so much in a partner. So I just really, I don't know, it's kind of great that I have that in you. So, yay.
Aw.
But I think that, you go through so many relationships where you're like, this person wants me to think these things. But it's really not there. And you can have days where you don't think that about yourself and you're like, oh, what is happening?
Sure.
But at the same time, like, someone can see that, and someone knows when you're thriving and doing a good job. Like, that's a great thing.
Well, I think, and we're totally like, we're not, this is turning into like, I love this so much about you, and oh, I love this so much about you.
No, you hang up.
And we will talk a little bit more, we'll sort of bring this back to like long-term, short-term relationships, that kind of thing, and adjusting and all that. But on your subject there, we, from the beginning, there's been a lot of mutual support and encouragement, and I, you're not just sympathetic to a bad day or empathetic to a bad day. You push me a little bit, and I like it. And I've tried to be. I know you've said that you're not used to being able to, at the end of the day, have somebody you can actually lean on a little bit. Whether you just weren't. Well, I should let you say. Was that because you just weren't comfortable with the person, or they just weren't there, available for that? Or both.
I'll say this. I mean, being in the position that you're in, I'll say this, I work in the hospitality industry. So you deal a lot with people being upset or being mad about things, or, maybe you made a decision that wasn't like the best decision, but at the time you thought it was, and handling what I have to handle. It's nice having someone who I've dated be through those experiences. And if I'm questioning myself, I have anxiety about a lot of things. If I'm questioning myself and why I did it, and oh my god, what's going to happen, I have someone to talk me off the ledge.
Yeah.
And believe me, there is a part of me that's like, I wish I could just talk my own self off the ledge. But
if you don't have to.
In some ways, it's not realistic to just think that you can just handle that by yourself without someone else opening.
Right.
So it's been really nice to have someone to talk about those things, and for someone to bring it back to, you did the right thing, or it's not as bad as it seems, without being that simple about that, the way I'm saying it.
Well, sure. And I never...
Like, no one-liners, like...
Right. You'll be fine. It'll be better tomorrow.
The pot calling the kettle black. Like,
it's because I've never been in hospitality, but I've got decades of retail experience, so we both have that service-based job experience, and that does give me the perspective. I don't know as much about the ins and outs of checking a guest in, or I'm learning a lot about the hotel industry from you and from watching the Gilmore Girls.
Lorelai Gilmore, she lives and breathes. Just kidding. I wish.
I'm a lucky guy. But no, so when you tell me about this situation or that situation, I'm able to bring a little bit more to it than just, wow, that sounds like it was rough. Because I know how people are. And I know how people are when they're in a position to be served, and how stupid and horrible they can be,
Well, feeling like you're in a place of power.
Right, yeah.
And I think that I'll relate this back to the relationship thing. I think a struggle to power is really hard. So because a lot of the times I've been in a position at work where I haven't been in charge and I've had a manager over me, it's really hard to be in a relationship where someone always wants to have the power.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Like you feel like you're... I don't want to too hot for radio. Too hot for podcasts.
Nothing's too hot for podcasts.
You feel like you're being screwed twice.
That's good. Yeah.
Like it's hard at work. You have someone like judging you and asking you to do things and you have to
And
do
not just
it.
your manager, but the staff, the clients or the
client's
guests.
doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, because someone can have a hard day at work and have their boss be mean to them, and I always think that. I'm like, they must have a really tough boss.
Yeah.
And that's why they're being mean to me.
Yeah.
But it's like, again, then there's the power struggle if you are in a relationship with someone who's like, well, what about my feelings? And why aren't you doing that? And, you know, what about me? What about me? And well, you know, again, excuse my language, but like, well, I got off, I'm good.
You can swear like a sailor on that.
It's like, well, I got off, so everything's great.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, did you want to enjoy yourself during this time? No? Okay. So there you go. It's like, you don't want to be with someone who gives up, who lets you get away with everything, but you don't want someone necessarily who, you know, is always in charge, is always on top.
Right.
Doesn't let you have an even life. Will say to you, well, what about my feelings?
Yeah.
And believe me, I had the talk with somebody about, you know, you get enough into a relationship, and I had the conversation with someone who was dating at the time, and, you know, we're talking about, you know, well, if I decided I didn't want to have a kid, but we, you know, became with child, in a family way, it always cracks me up, you know, what would we do? And I was like, you know, to be honest, I wouldn't want to keep it.
Right.
And it's like, well, what about my feelings? What about me?
Go get pregnant with somebody else.
And you know, and I think that's
Comes down to
as
it.
far as I know from Facebook, I think that's what ended up happening, and like more power to them. But that's what they wanted.
Well, yeah, and that comes back
And
to it.
it's hard because the other person's like, well, you know, that might be your life, but you have part of my life inside you.
Yeah,
It's like, but I'm carrying it.
but. Yeah, that's a big yeah, but. I mean, and that comes back to it. Like, well, if you know you want to have kids, then don't be with somebody who doesn't want to have kids. You know, and that again, you know, we covered that ground probably in hour 3. You know, of our knowing each other, at least in person. Going into this, my expectations were. It's wrong to say I had low expectations, but I came into it without expectations. You know.
That reminds me of I don't know if it's a side note. If you've ever seen the Mad TV used to have
Lowered expectations, yeah. Where they're walking next to the barbed wire and they touch it and jerk back.
No, it's like really sad dating videos.
Yeah.
Lowered
I'll have a link in the show notes to some YouTube clips. But yeah, so I didn't.
Charming, right?
I didn't have expectations because you were cautious because you didn't really do relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I was cautious because I had been coming out of nearly a 5-year relationship that ended very suddenly. It was very intense, my fear was that I was going to leap out of, for the wrong reasons, for like reasons of loneliness or for reasons that, you know, it's easier to feel new things than it is to process old things, you know. And so I was very cautious and like, you know, this just is what it is, and you know, it's casual and nice, but I mean, I don't know how else to put it without it sounding corny, but our hearts had other ideas because you walked the walk about communicating, and you were both being who you said you were, and also willing to kind of to step out onto that, you know, that gangplank, you know, with me.
I don't want to say our early on relationship was like an experiment for me, but
It's okay to say that, though.
An experiment I was going to take in communicating what I was communicating. And if you said what's wrong, I wasn't going to say nothing. and
Right.
then like hold on to it until you like figured out what was wrong with
Or it just festered and then we died.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, because I have a strong belief, as cliche as it sounds, like that's probably what like was the, you know, led to the detriment of my like last relationships. It's not communicating and not being upfront about what I wanted or things I was afraid of or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and not just that, but you know, the one of the big things that I learned over the last year or so was that talking about communicating is not communicating.
Mm-hmm.
You know, saying
It's like saying we're gonna we should get together.
right,
And then we don't.
Oh yeah,
But it's like, oh, we should communicate better.
Right.
Okay. And then that's the end. Like it's not actually happening.
So yeah, how do we do that? Or you know,
It's free. It's easy. Just say something.
a lot of stating the problem without actually working together to figure out the causes of the problem and how to solve the problem. And granted, I mean, our I think I can't even think of an example, but I think what we have talked about things that have been like pre problems, like, you know, this is sort of bothering me, or this is, you know, an issue that came up in my head, and which is the time you're supposed to talk about it, you know, not when it's like this giant cancerous thing, but when it's this little tiny thing, you know, and I appreciate that so much. Being with you is helping me to remember that love is not just a thing that you feel, because that's all in you, you know. I feel love, I love this person. It's all about what you yourself are feeling, but loving should be the active thing, the act of loving, the act of being loving toward another person, to making sure that they feel from you what you are feeling. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, and Matt is huge on that. I mean, if we're going to talk about something like early on, for me...
I'm huge on it because I've been so bad at it in the past. It's the big lesson.
Well, it's even little things. So, it's even things Matt has no participation in. So, I do these kind of ritual sweats, and I go and do it, and it's a relaxing thing for me. It helps me sleep better. It helps you shed that extra water weight. Like, it's really nice. I was dating someone before, short term, and they said to me, short term, and they said to me, well, there's a lovely thing you can do with sweating called going for a run. And they were like kind of saying like, why do you do this particular thing? Why don't you just like work out like normal people? And it was something that I just found relaxing. And Matt's response to it wasn't that. Matt was like, well, I'll have a good sweat. And then like I saw him like later that day, how was your sweat? And and I think I thought about that yesterday. I went and did one yesterday, and I thought about that, and I texted him right after, and I say, I just had so much, just a big wash of gratitude came over me, and I was just thinking about how, just how lucky I am right now, and how lucky I am to have such a great person in my life. Great guy, yeah, but just great person in my life. So, makes me happy, and I went through a period of time where we always talk about the ever so fun last 6 months. I went through like a 6-month period that wasn't great, and a period where I should have been reaching out to like friends, and I wasn't. And it was funny, like starting to date Matt, like I wanted to reconnect with these friends again. Not that I didn't want to like never be with my boyfriend, but I'm like it gave me
you were coming out of this.
It was a new release
period, yeah.
to have those people back into my life and have a more balanced life.
Yeah.
And not just go to work and then come home and like try not to die.
Right.
Like it was a big deal for me. So I thank him for that.
it's dead air because we're gazing at each other. Yeah, well, I mean, it's so. I won't generalize with this. I have been guilty of being really good at the things that are in a relationship, being really good at the things that are easy for me to be really good at, you know. And it comes back to that again, that idea of, you know, am I feeling love and acting like that, or am I acting on the love I feel, you know, and paying attention to not just what, I'm trying to think about like a solid example, like, I can't. But if there were like ways, I'm gonna use a hypothetical, which is not going to be a real example, but this is just going to be like a really trite way to illustrate this. Like if I thought that it was really easy, and this kind of gets back to what you were saying about like I did all the things that are supposed to be loving, and why are you leaving? If I thought that the way to show I loved you was to give you a red rose every day for a month or whatever, right? And what you actually needed was for, again, these are silly, trite examples, but what you actually needed was for me to wipe my feet when I walk in the door. Right? You know? I might be really good at the thing that is easy for me to do, which is pick up a red rose every day. But if
what you assume every girl likes.
Maybe so.
Because of your past relationship.
Yeah, maybe so. Or it's just, you know, but what I've realized, and you know, part of me is like, yeah, it took you long enough, but on the other hand, it's the people you're with that kind of allow you to stay in these patterns too, you know. Mm-hmm. I realized before I met you, but you've allowed me to act on these realizations, you know, is that it's far more loving to do the things that maybe are challenging to yourself, or maybe you're not as comfortable with, but that matter to the other person, you know. It gets back to the creating the mansion instead of the car, you know. It's like, well, you know, it's a beautiful car, but and I guess I've been guilty about that. I haven't really thought about it in those terms before, but and it's been real easy for me to be in long-term relationships, I think, because I ended up with people, we were just comfortable enough, you know, and there's that sense of, well, all these things are great, and the other things, there's time to make it better. And that time to make it better always gets pushed back and gets pushed back and gets pushed back and gets pushed back because there's life, and you know, and the routines that you set up become security blankets. You know,
ruts.
They become ruts. Yeah.
Rut team.
Yeah. You go from rutting to being in a rut, and you know, unless you're going to do the rutting in a rut, like in the road somewhere. But no, so, yeah, and it's funny because you and I think, are very careful to not talk about, like, well, next year, and it's still, like, I mean, you know, we were kind of laughing about, ooh, our 3-month anniversary, you know, but, I don't know, and I feel like we are building something together that it's like the only blueprint is like this sort of mutual respect, and it's the idea of mutual needs and
well, and I think that's the amazing thing. Like, for instance, I brought up that, and I mean, maybe this is a symptom of me not being a relationship person, but I like having my own space. I have my own apartment right now, and I probably will want to maintain it. Most likely staying in it for I don't know how long. But there isn't a lot of thought of like moving into one place together.
No.
Now, granted, we, you know, do spend time together. We stay at each other's houses and things, but I kind of enjoy having my own space, and respect that. And I think people take on natural milestones, or what they assume are natural milestones. But like, I think our relationship's unique. I don't think we're gonna have necessarily those natural milestones, like, you know, the collie, the kid, the fence,
Right,
pick a fence. But,
right,
you know,
right.
I think we're gonna have different ones, like
who knows?
made it home alive. No. Went to Portland for the first time.
Right. Whatever it might be. Yeah. And
saw the biggest ball of yarn. Like,
well, and that's just it. That's just it. I guess I don't feel like I don't feel, maybe for the first time, like there are like expected milestones.
And I feel like you don't expect those from me, because I think that
that's what I'm saying.
You've experienced things, and I can be like for a while I thought I was going to end up with a guy who had like a kid, because I personally think kids are great, love my nieces, but I don't really want them. So I thought, okay, if I ended up with a guy with a kid, I would be like, woohoo, built-in stepmom. You know, I can do this.
You can do all the fun stuff without, yeah.
And I believe I can do that for my friends and their kids in the future and stuff.
Right.
But that's what's so fun. When I have those, like, flash, you know, the movie montages, part of them are me with the person I'm with, but part of them are me, like, being fun Aunt Meryl and fun Uncle, you know, and it could be fun Uncle Matt. And, like, that's a big deal to me, is the idea of, like, having someone who's super creative and fun, and we don't necessarily have to jump on the kid wagon, but are super fun and have all this pent-up energy that we can share with small people, you know?
Right.
And I think that's, like, so fun. And to find someone who doesn't necessarily want to have kids but isn't a mobster. No, believe me, there are people who are like that. They're like, well, there's things you don't own. Dogs, kids, or boats. And I think Matt has a very healthy opinion. I think one of the first things he said to me was, I think I'd be a great dad, but I don't, I understand if I'm with someone who doesn't want them. And I just thought that was an amazing thing, because you got enough confidence to say, if this is what my partner wanted, I think I would be a great person in that way. But I understand you not wanting these things.
Because I've never out and out wanted kids. I've never thought that I'm going to be that guy who gets in a relationship, gets married, and has babies. But I do. I know that I would be. I think I would be a good, loving dad, because I think I'm a generally compassionate and good person, generally. I think my attitude, and I think I probably said this to you that time, is my attitude was, well, if it happened, and the other person was like, you know what, I think I actually do want this to happen, then I would be there, But I wouldn't ever be the kind of person who's like, let's try to make a baby. Well, we can try to make one. Let's just make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah. and this is no offense to anyone who...
No, yeah, breeders breed. Go ahead. Do it. Do it up.
Whenever somebody says I want to put a baby in you, I feel like it's like I want to put an alien in you. It always really makes me uncomfortable.
Oh my God. Well, just that phrase, I want to put a baby in you.
So...
That's like, I want to put a roofie in your drain.
Yeah. I think just the fact that Matt would never say anything like that, and that I was the one just saying that now, that makes me feel
grossed me out. Yeah.
Sorry. Podcast over, relationship over.
I want to put, it just makes me like, oh.
I'm so glad that makes your skin crawl.
Did anyone ever actually say that to you?
No, because I think I would be I would want to put and then I would walk away. I'm like, you're not going to do that.
Right. Yeah.
March off to wherever.
Yeah, they would be saying the last part of the sentence to a cloud of dust.
Exactly. Yeah. That's where our society is out there. I mean, people still say those things.
Yeah.
It's getting better, but people still say those things.
It's getting better in places. Not everywhere, sadly. So, usually at the end of the podcast, I turn it over to the audience, however small they may be, because I want to know, Meryl and I are coming into this thing from the perspective, two different perspectives, someone who's very used to long-term relationships, who is now in a relationship that, saying day by day makes it seem trite, but But like I said, we don't talk about next year. We don't talk about our 5-year plan or anything like that. We're just loving each other, you know. And Meryl being someone who, you know, even the idea that there might be a next week, it might be new. I think we can say
little accomplishments.
Yeah. So, you know.
Hashtag many milestones.
So, you know, like we go to the same grocery store. That's a big deal. But so, you know, I always want to hear from the viewers, from the listeners, how, I guess the best way to phrase this is, where have you been and where have you arrived at in your feelings about the relationships that you're in or want to be in? Where are you at? You know, have you come from a situation where you were in long-term relationships because it was what you did and maybe being alone was too scary, and now it's just a matter of well, I'm speaking again for myself, it's a matter now of just being so happy and comfortable with the person I'm with that, you know, sky's the limit and let's see where it goes. Or are you someone, you know, who has been the serial dater who suddenly finds themselves in this committed, longer term thing? How'd you get there? How did it go? What were some of the pitfalls and things that happened along the way? Share whatever you want. You can send a voicemail to mwsmedia@gmail.com. You can leave comments in the show notes at mattselznick.com. Just look for this episode number 3 of I Know This Much, and you can leave comments right there. You can, of course, comment on the YouTube video. It'd be nice to have some comments there that weren't the usual YouTube comments. If you know what I mean, it's YouTube, it's kind of a jungle.
What do people write?
Well, nobody's really left any comments on me, but if you go to any YouTube video and look at the comments, there's ultimately somebody who's just like...
They're like, what a dingus!
That would be a kind one. That would be like tame. That would be like YouTube romper room. Come on, you've never looked at the comments on YouTube?
Nice necklace.
They're horrible. Fortunately,
like if someone left like a mean comment in another language, I would just assume it was something nice about me because I wouldn't know the language. Like if it said C translation, I'd be like, no, I'm good.
But I mean, you know, so leave comments is my point. Feedback is always great. Feedback is wonderful. The show is on iTunes now, so if you use iTunes for your podcasting needs, a little comment, a little rating would be awesome. I'm not saying you should leave 5 stars, but the better the ratings, the more ratings the show receives.
But my boss sees it, so do it.
Oh, well, there you go. So the more ratings a show gets on iTunes, the higher it goes in the rankings, the more visible it becomes, and the bigger this conversation can become. So comments, ratings, all that stuff, real good. Feedback, please.
Get into it.
Yeah. Get into it, man. Do you have anything you'd like to say to wrap things up?
Well, I mean, like I said yesterday, I just was just full of gratitude, and I think you just have to stop sometimes, and you know, in the old phrase, stop and smell the roses. Like, you know, I think one of the first things I said to you was, I had a tough 6 months, and I had said, you have breathed life into my existence. And I know that, and to me that even sounded like something you would say at an altar when you were getting married. It just sounded like dumb in my head. But I mean, you really have, and it was a tough time. And you know, it's hard for me to admit that, you know, another person or a guy is bringing joy to me, but you really do. And so, thank you for that, and I love you.
I didn't know that's what you were going to say to wrap things up. It's funny. I told you this last night after you told me your gratitude story, because probably kind of around the same time, hello universe, I was just kind of spying on your Instagram feed and looking at your old Instagram pictures. Because it's nice to be able to look at your pictures when you're not around sometimes, because I'm a cornball.
Yeah.
And just flipping through and seeing your face, and I mean, and these are pictures from years ago where, before we even knew each other, before we knew you existed in the world, and I think that was part of what caused my reaction.
Your neighbor, what?
And who's my neighbor for the whole time?
Think about that
here.
existence.
Yeah. And I think the fact that here were these pictures of you just looking amazing and being you from 2015, 2014, whatever. And I felt this rush of gratitude that you're in my life now, that this woman in these pictures is now part of my life. It brought tears to my eyes, more than that. And it's difficult for me to say. I want to be fair, and not overly melodramatic by saying I've never felt that before. But I don't remember ever feeling that way before. I can say that much. That like you walk through a doorway and the bucket of water over the door's jam falls over your head, kind of a rush of feeling at just thinking about how lucky I am.
Aww.
And I can say you're not what I expected, because I didn't expect anything. And you have brought joy into my life so clearly, and you inspire me, and you make me want to act on all the lessons that I've learned, and to make them count. And I love you.
Well, I mean, that's what this is about, is learning about relationships and what are the benefits of that. And I mean, I think I'm learning that, and I'm learning that with you, so.
Yay, us!
Yay.
So, yeah, folks, that's probably episode 3 of I Know This Much.
I did like that corniness for the last part. We didn't even look at you guys.
Got pretty goofy there for a second.
We didn't even look at you.
Who are they? Yeah. Could you give us a room? Give us the room. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You have a place to go.
This was my maiden voyage of podcasting.
Right.
So yay!
Yeah. So yeah.
Thank you for being so warm. Please be warm.
So if you want to see this one do more podcasts, that'd be another thing you could maybe either hear her own or back here on the show.
Or and
if you want to see this face and hear this voice in the world of podcasting, then speak up.
It's like everyone's spotlighting.
And by this voice, for those of you on the audio, I mean, if you want more Meryl Phillips in the world of podcasting, speak up.
That could be way fun. I know a consultant.
He's kind of cheap.
Yeah.
He's inexpensive. He's not cheap.
Yeah. Inexpensive. Thank you very much. Alrighty.
My name is Matthew Wayne Selznick.
I'm Meryl Phillips.
Take care.
Bye.